Hey everybody, it's Aldebar here back with another video, and before we begin, here's a little note. If you want to pause and read it, you can, but I'm gonna move on. Basically, it was just a note that 14-year-old me left for future me, so if you want to go back and read that, go ahead. So today I'm going to be showing you three things. The first is this gigantic stack of papers that I had used my allowance money on to buy so I could have something to draw on. At the time, it was cheaper for me to buy the pack of paper than it was to get a sketchbook, so I went with more. So that is the first thing I'm showing you, and then I'm also going to show you the two sketchbooks that my parents ended up later getting me for Christmas. So the reason I originally got into drawing is because around the ages of 13 and 14, I was writing a lot of Percy Jackson and My Little Pony fan fictions, and I didn't have any cover artworks to go with them. So around that time, I ended up picking up two really cheap, awful sketchbooks from Big Lots, and I took them with me to BronyCon. And I had put all of this My Little Pony artwork in it, and when I got home, I ended up cleaning my room later, and when I found them, I threw them out. After making that horrible mistake is around the time I realized, wait a minute, I actually really like making art. I might even like it more than writing fan fiction because I could actually visualize my stories. So I ended up buying this really big pack of paper that you are currently seeing with the allowance money I had gotten from my dad. I realized all this paper wasn't going to end up being enough, so after a little bit of begging, I ended up getting two sketchbooks for Christmas. The sad thing is, one of my biggest regrets in life is the fact that I threw out those two original sketchbooks I had. I kind of had to accept the fact I was never going to have all of the artwork I ever made, because not even counting these two sketchbooks, on top of that, I also ended up doing original art commissions for Pokemon cards shortly after I had filled up all of this paper and all of those two sketchbooks. People started coming up to me and asking me to draw them their favorite Pokemon or the characters and stuff, and I would give away the original artworks I made, not prints. Back when I first started, I was obsessed with improvement, and all of the art YouTubers would tell you to do improvement challenges or do realistic art. That was like the number one thing everybody would tell you, is just do realistic art and do challenges and be consistent. And that was the thing I struggled with the most. I will not deny the fact that if you do realistic art continuously, you will naturally get better because it helps to be able to observe the real world in order to create a fake one. So if you really want to get better at anime, it is true that if you do real life studies, you will naturally get better at anime as well. However, let me just say, I constantly tried to do all of this realistic art, and it was not something I was interested in. It was not something I enjoyed doing. It was not something I was naturally good at. And I understand if I continued to practice it and stuff, I was going to get better. And I still do occasionally draw from real life, but it is not something I like doing. I was using a lot of tutorials on YouTube from Bittersweet Nightmare, Mark Crilly, Jaw with Jazza, you could name it, I was using it. I also eventually ended up investing money into some how to draw manga books, but the funny thing is, I actually never really used them that much. I just preferred online references. It was nice to have those books as like an extra guide to have on hand, but honestly, you can learn to draw without ever having to buy anything at all. I do want to give some advice to the younger artists out there, and I think I have quite a bit of it. So, first of all, don't ever throw out your artwork like I did. It's honestly one of my biggest regrets in life. I hate myself for what I did. And the problem was, at the time, I was really embarrassed about the stuff I had made. I thought I wasn't good enough. I didn't want anybody to see it. I didn't want anybody to think that that was my best I could do because I knew I could do better. And I threw it out, but I wish I had kept it because now I don't have a record of it. I can't look and see how far I've come. My other piece of advice is don't do anything you don't want to do. Now, obviously, if you want to improve, yes, drawing from life and gaining those observational skills will greatly help you improve. If you want to learn how to actually draw anatomy, you have to study real anatomy. But the issue is, don't let that curb your passion for art like it kind of did for me. You know, I was just a young artist at the time. Something I feel like I probably would have benefited more from was just being told to only ever draw what you're passionate about. Because I was so focused on improving, I felt like I didn't have any inspiration or any creativity for anything I actually wanted to do. I wish I had spent more time drawing the things I really enjoyed as a kid rather than trying to learn how to draw perfectly and become an amazing artist. You'll notice I have all of these unfinished artworks because something didn't look quite right and I just kind of gave up on it. I would have benefited more from just drawing for fun and because I was passionate about it and not caring about how it looked because I would have actually completed artworks. I would have had more practice in, line art and coloring and other things because I wouldn't have been worrying about the imperfections. So once again, just to clarify, I'm not saying you should never draw from life. It is definitely crucial in order to improve. But when you're this young, when you are around the age of 13, 14, 15, heck, even 16, I wouldn't be worrying about how great and how amazing your art is. You should just be worrying about actually creating something and completing something. If I were to critique my own artwork right now, looking back on it, I feel like my biggest issue is that I almost never colored anything in. I almost never used line art. And whenever I did actually finish a piece, it looked halfway decent, The artworks that I actually did finish look a million times better than the stuff I gave up on halfway through. So my other piece of advice is, which kind of leads into the last one, is the fact that you should never give up on an artwork halfway through. Always try to finish it. Sometimes you'll have that one that you just can't get right, and I understand that. Sometimes you really just can't finish something, but you should always be trying to finish it. Don't give up on it halfway through because a finished artwork looks so much different than the beginning stages. Anyone else noticing the artwork I did for fun looks so much nicer than the studies I was attempting? Something really weird that I've noticed is I don't really have the world's greatest long-term memory. I remember stuff, but the thing is with art, it doesn't matter how long it's been. If I look at a piece of artwork I've made, I'll remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, sometimes even what I was eating that day. Like, just looking at that piece of artwork, I'm like, my brain travels back to the time I was making it. And it's just such a crazy, weird feeling. And it just makes drawing that much more worth it to me. Because I'm always going to have those memories. Well, hopefully. My cat crawled up into my lap and she's forcing me to hold up her torso and her arm right now. And it's just the most uncomfortable thing. And I'm having hecka carpal tunnel right now. Another big problem I had and still have is the fact that I have problems trying to stick to only one sketchbook at a time. So I originally started off with the lighter colored sketchbook and then I moved on to the darker colored one, but I didn't finish the lighter colored one first. I got maybe halfway or 75% of the way through it before I started doing more drawings in the darker colored one. And then I would return to the lighter colored one and then I'd go back to the darker colored one. It was just bad. And I've always been like that. I still do it. I have trouble sticking to only one book at a time. I also really didn't fill up full sketchbook pages. I kind of started doing that more with my third one. I kind of realized how empty my stuff looked. But yeah, if you're a younger artist, try to fully use the entire page. For some reason, I would get sick of something and then I just move on to the next one. If you have made it this far into the video, just out of curiosity, comment down below bear cub. That is the secret code word. If you've made it this far into the video, comment the words bear cub. It's also just so crazy to see some of my old OCs and see how far they've come because some of these have completely transformed into something nothing like what they used to be, and to think I'm writing an entire manga about some of them now is just, it blows my mind. Whenever I feel uninspired nowadays, I just kind of look at my old artwork and I see my old interests, and that kind of reignites the flame in me. But back then, when I felt uninspired, I just couldn't draw anything because I didn't have any ideas, and I was kind of just constantly embarrassed about my artworks. So now it's a blessing that I have all of these sketchbooks because I can look back and see the things that, old me would have wanted future me to draw. Also, yeah, if you see any drawings of doggies, they're all gone now, which is really sad, but they were my childhood dogs. I'll occasionally just see an artwork and wish I had spent the time to color it in, but like I used to be so afraid of coloring in my artworks because I was always worried that I was gonna ruin them, especially with line art, because I've always had really shaky hands, and obviously with time I've gotten better at it, but I was never good at line art, and I would constantly give up on artworks that, like, even though the sketch was finished, I would give up on it anyways just because I was afraid of ruining it. Hopefully, someone will hear some of the stuff I'm saying and learn from my mistakes. I did join Art Amino around 2016, and then I didn't really join the Star vs. the Forces of Evil Amino until like September 2016, I want to say. It's just so weird to look back on this because, I got into Amino because of my art, and it was because I found the art Amino that I ended up later finding the Star vs. the Forces of Evil Amino, and I wouldn't even join the Star vs. the Forces of Evil Amino if it wasn't for the fact that my one friend had shown me Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and like, if it wasn't for like all of these things combined, I would have never met my husband, so, I mean, I'm just so grateful for art and all the things it has done for me. Between my cats making little, like, sounds in the background and the cars going past, I mean, 90% of my videos are ruined by something. If you are a young artist watching this video, I hope something about this entire thing has inspired you. I mean, I started drawing at about 13, 14. I got into practicing drawing My Little Ponies and stuff, but I didn't really get into it until about 2016. So, I mean, I was a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to art. I feel like a lot of people tend to start when they're 10 or 11, maybe even 12, but I mean, I think this kind of just proves that anybody can learn to draw. I think I've made a lot of improvement since the time I've started, and yeah, I hope it's inspiring for somebody. In elementary school, like third, fourth, fifth grade, even, I did draw a little bit. I used to draw like my dream houses and stuff, and I had a kid or two, I still remember their faces, who would tell me that I couldn't draw, that I should stop drawing because it was not something I was good at. But you know what? Here I am today, and I'm making money from it now. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, make sure you like and subscribe. I will see you all later. Nine cat away.